Welcome to This Explainer. Today we are tearing down some massive, literally Hollywood-sized illusions. If you've ever watched an action movie or a spy thriller, you've totally been fed this highly dramatized version of what it means to compromise a computer network. Well, we're going to strip all that away today and look at the meticulous and honestly way more fascinating reality of how true security auditing actually works. We're talking systematic, deliberate steps here, not just movie magic.
So, let me ask you, how long does it actually take to hack a target? Picture a hacker in your head right now. You're probably imagining someone in a dark hoodie, green text raining down multiple monitors, furiously smashing the keyboard while this giant red access denied timer ticks down on the screen, right? It's all frantic energy, flashing lights, and breaking into the mainframe in under 10 seconds. But how does that cinematic timeline actually hold up against a real-world cyber attack?
Okay, let's dive into this, because the irony here is just staggering. Hollywood sells us 3 seconds of frantic keyboard smashing, but real security auditing, it is remarkably patient. It's like 90% passive analysis. We're talking open source intelligence, or OSINT, poring over pages of incredibly dry documentation and, honestly, drinking mountains of cold coffee. A true hacker's actual superpower is their patience and their relentless attention to detail, not some magical hack button that instantly bypasses a firewall. They are observers first and foremost.
And that brings us to the core mindset shift of our whole explainer today, the fundamental difference between a Vandal and a master watchmaker. See, a malicious hacker, the Vandal, acts purely for ego. They just want that quick dopamine hit. They want to smash the watch with a hammer and watch the pieces fly apart. But the ethical hacker, the white hat, they're the master watchmaker. They are obsessed with the architecture. They want to know exactly why the gears skipped a beat, where that underlying logical flaw is hiding, and how to rebuild that system so it becomes physically impossible to break again. It is the profound difference between chaotic destruction and meticulous creation.
Now, one of the absolute greatest tools in the Master Watchmaker's toolkit requires literally nothing but a standard search bar. It's called Google hacking. Pioneered by security expert Johnny Long, Google hacking uses search engines and advanced operators to passively find exploitable targets and highly sensitive data. And the genius of this, you are doing all this without ever connecting directly to the target server. You are simply asking Google what is already found, making it the ultimate passive reconnaissance tool. To actually pull this off, we're not just typing in standard keywords, we are stacking operators. You've got site to lock onto a specific domain, file type to hunt down exposed spreadsheets, and in URL to snipe specific web addresses. By snapping these operators together, you instantly filter out all the random noise of the internet. It completely transforms a standard search engine into a highly targeted sniper rifle. And this brilliantly illustrates the anatomy of a truly passive OSINT audit. First up, an auditor might search for accidental directory listings using a query like intitleIndex.of. Next, they check the server version just by looking at the cached footprint Google left behind. Finally, they cross-reference that specific server version with known vulnerabilities. They have just mapped out a target's weak points, and they haven't triggered a single alarm on the target's network because they only ever interacted with Google's servers. But remember, our master watchmaker needs incredible precision here. A sloppy search for index of might yield a ton of false positives. Like, say, a perfectly intentional, completely harmless web page titled Index of Native American Resources. To filter out those intentional pages from the actual vulnerable directory leaks, the auditor refines their search. They use keywords inherently found inside raw web directories, terms like parent directory, name, and size. That kind of context and precision, that's what separates a real professional from an amateur.
Just look at how this plays out. Careless human behavior literally leaves breadcrumbs everywhere. When administrators install web servers, they honestly leave the default test pages up all the time. By simply searching for a default phrase like, "Hey, it worked" in the title, an auditor instantly verifies that a target is running Apache 2.0. And if an admin is too casual to remove a basic test page, the attacker can rightfully assume the server isn't well maintained, which means the entire underlying operating system might be wide open for exploitation.
Taking it a step further, professionals can actually use Google as a CGI scanner. Usually, vulnerability scanners rely on these massive lists of known broken files and directories. But by taking just one line from that list, say a broken program like random_banner/index.cgi, and plugging it into an all-in URL Google search, the search engine instantly pinpoints servers running that exact vulnerable script. With just a little bit of knowledge, an attacker can manipulate that broken program to leak incredibly sensitive data, like a server's master password file. They've literally turned a public search engine into a targeted vulnerability scanner.
But here is where we hit a massive, uncrossable line in the sand. As Johnny Long himself puts it, actual exploitation of a found vulnerability crosses the ethical line and is not considered mere web searching. Finding the open door? That's reconnaissance. Actually walking through it and taking what's inside, that crosses a hard legal and professional boundary. Having these clear, rigid boundaries is exactly what defines a top-level professional in the information security field.
So, the crucial point here is understanding the concept of scope. A so-called script kiddie smashes everything indiscriminately because, well, they have no boundaries. A white hat hacker, however, works strictly within a legal and technical scope. Finding a vulnerability without taking down the production system, without corrupting data, and without triggering false alarms, that requires 10 times more intelligence and creativity than just reckless vandalism. Respecting the scope isn't some boring bureaucracy. It is the ultimate flex of total control. And that professionalism totally extends to how tools are used too. You might be thinking, why not just automate these thousands of Google searches? Well, Google's terms of service strictly forbids sending automated queries without express permission. While Unix tools like GooScan absolutely exist to automate these massive vulnerability checks against Google search appliances, a true professional respects the platform's rules. Staying within the bounds of the platforms you use is just a core part of the engineering discipline.
Unfortunately, the people actually building the systems aren't always as careful, which brings us to a term Johnny Long coined, the Google Dork. It was originally meant to describe an inept person revealed by Google, but it highlights this terrifying concept that highly sensitive stuff is just accidentally left out on the open web all the time. It proves you don't always need some crazy, sophisticated exploit when human error and a casual misconfiguration literally leave the front door wide open.
Let's see how this builds, because defenders can actually flip the script. Using a web-based honeypot or a GooPot, they use the hacker's own logic against them. The strategy is brilliant. Defenders create a fake, incredibly juicy-looking vulnerable directory, something like /admin/userlist. They let Google index it. Then, when a curious attacker searches for that specific vulnerability and clicks the link, the defender logs their referrer variable. The defender is now trapping, monitoring, and cataloging the attackers, using their very own search tactics as a snare.
This perfectly highlights the difference between a mere technician and a true information security engineer. A technician? They just memorize tools and Kali Linux utilities. They rely on software to run automated scanners indiscriminately. But an engineer understands system psychology and the logic of the creators. They visualize data flows, they anticipate logical failures before they even happen, and they look at fundamental architectural files like robots.txt long before they ever boot up a hacking tool. Architecture is absolutely everything.
So how do we actually protect our own architecture from these passive OSINT attacks? It all comes back to fundamentals. Keep sensitive data completely off the web. Use secure sharing like SSH or encrypted email instead. Put on your Watchmaker hat and test your own defenses using those advanced Google operators. Lock down your robots.txt file to tell web crawlers exactly what to ignore. And if something does accidentally leak, proactively request manual removal from Google's index.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought that completely flips that Hollywood hacker myth upside down. Listen, it is so easy to break things. Anyone can be a vandal. But if you have the knowledge and the power to absolutely destroy a system, yet you actively choose to document the flaw, stay within scope, and help rebuild it stronger, who really holds the power? True power isn't destruction. It's the mastery of the architecture. Thanks for exploring this with me today.